Part 2, Chronicles of My Rants, the insides of my mind. Welcome back to Reason With Me podcast, solo episode, vamping into 2025. The podcast's been kicking for a while, and I appreciate anyone that's still here. It has changed directions a few times, and I guess we're getting clearer and clearer on the mission. And that might mean that I'm dropping followers like flies, but I'm getting more aligned in speaking my truth. And that's what's so important to me. So if you're here for it, welcome back. If you're first time here, you missed part 1. I am a goofball, fired up, ready to go. Let's dive into part 2. A quick recap. Part 1 is all about trauma work done properly. The new angle, the new mission is to be able to support health professionals, coaches, psychotherapists, therapists, whatever you call yourself, when you're working with someone's complex humanness, then you're working with their trauma. And how you do that is the necessity to do it properly in a very informed way and a very intricate and nuanced way. So I'm working with coaches. I'm working with people that want to become better therapists, and I'm working to get them up to the standard that doesn't exist, that I didn't create, but I guess I have a responsibility to help people be able to do this work as humbly as possibly, as informed as they can, and with the devotion and the conviction that's needed. So, a bit of the brain dump, the info, the everything that you need was in the first, and I guess in the second, I really want to talk to some of the examples that I have when it comes to what to do and what not to do. So let's jump straight into it. This might touch the edges of some people, but let me get very clear. And this is my perspective, and all of this shit is opinion based. Most things are, but I stand true to this. I believe, from where I sit, trauma cannot be cured, and it can't be fully healed. Ask any psychiatrist how many of their clients they've actually cured in terms of their mental health issues and mental illnesses, and they will say cured? 0, donut, none. We're not there yet. Maybe we never will get there. To heal and cure from experiences itself, we have to have not had the experience at all. Now, we can get better. We can change. We can grow, and we can step into an incredible space of transformation, growth, and recovery. But we cannot fully be healed. And I'm sorry to say. God damn, I wish I could. And I wish that for so many of the people that I've worked with, for so many of the pain that I know that exists in this world. But let me give you an example. There are a lot. It makes me so sad to know how many there are of this. But there are a lot of coaches speaking about, I've healed my core wounds. I healed my trauma. I cured, the depths of my wounds. I released all my pain. How incredible for the consumer on Instagram, jumping into wherever you find this, I was going to say bullshit, walking around with their blocks and their shadows and their imperfections, thinks that that's just the sexiest thing in the world. Healed? I can be healed? Where do I sign? Right? do I sign? Only then to get their nervous system so hijacked by the price tag of the coach's offer and the guarantee that they're suggesting, right? The terms and conditions only then to say, only if you fully do the work. It's in the fullness of you being able to really commit where you will get this guarantee, which only leaves the coach covered in their asses, right? And the big gray area for contracting, right? That hijacking of that nervous system only gets them overwhelmed, panicked, and urgent and desperate to take the leap of faith to a false promise. This is not only something that we can do for others, can't do for others. It's not something that one can fully do for themselves. It's a never-ending saga, right? So the coach, right? The therapist, they're less vocal, and that's only because they've got more restrictions, right? They've got more ethical bounds by their accreditation that they're not allowed to say certain things, which, is its own mess in its own right. But the coach that preaches that they have healed themselves, or making that promise that I can fix you. Let's give them an example of what they've done to be able to do that for themselves. Let's say that what that wound is that I am not good enough. And they learned that when they heard the indirect message from a dad that never came home, and no matter what they did, couldn't get him to stay, therefore not being able to win against their trauma, and having the shame that they are not good enough constantly ripple and stretch them in desperate ways. From there, he, for the sake of the story, lived a life of pain, right? Trying to prove himself that he is in fact good enough, whatever the beautiful journey of discovery and recovery may be, right? He cannot ever be fully healed in that experience. That little boy, no matter what, that had that imprint happen, that experience happen to him, that message starting to be concreted, where he concreted it here thereafter, still exists. The little boy still exists. Wherever he goes, he's there, as well as the defensive, adaptive teenager parts of him that are there to protect, right? To be fully healed is to say that this God, right, to this guy who's claiming, proclaiming, preaching that he's healed himself, to be fully healed is to say that now no more is there conflict in my relationship, right? That any conflict that ever touches any emotion of shame is no longer possible. And the trigger of the message that I am not good enough is no longer ever even in question. So let's give an example to that. The heat of the moment with a partner in a stressful situation, right? That just happens to leave the room because there's just too much tension. Right, they're in a conflict. They've had a little blow up, and they're dysregulated, and the need has been to separate. Right, to just leave the room. To be fully healed is to say that no feeling is triggered, no sensation occurs in the body. There's no memory that the body remembers that impacts the heart and creates any disconnection. That there's no link to even slightly pressing on the wound that once was. That no more will he ever have an anxious thought to reach and pull to get that love again, or to want to run and to hide to avoid more hurt. No. Sorry. That's just not true. This cannot be fully done. It cannot be fully, in its fullness, true, right? We're human. We are humans of connection, stories, experiences, relationships. That's beautiful. But we're just a bunch of atoms with memories and feelings and energy. What is possible? Yes, what is possible is an ability to reduce the impact, to be able to not only ever be touched by an emotion rather than being absolutely walloped by it. What's possible is to not be as overwhelmed, to not be as sensitive to a difficulty or a conflict, to be able to tend to the impact with a different flavor, different to the patterns, different to the tones, a softness and an ease with what lands. To be able to bounce back and to repair, to be able to respond instead of react, show love and compassion instead of criticism and doubt. Now this is recovery. This is true. This I believe. This is to be able to be with oneself, to all of the parts of ourself. This is to integrate and become more aligned and embodied in authentic you. This is healing. This is recovery. So, the tending, the attuning, the joining, it's an ongoing reparenting, reconnecting experience that will keep being there. It will continue to be needed, to be maintained into our last breath. This is the reality. This is reality. This is the work. Never the work done. There's no such thing. There's not fully done. No done. Sorry. I've done the work. Don't see that, coach. Maybe we've got more bliss, peace, space, and wholeness, but it's always recovery. And unfortunately, it's just not recovered. It's not healed. You can look at it in a different way if you like. But I'm okay with it being recovery. When I start to play the music of my life in a different way, start to have a different tune to enter into the space, finally, a vulnerable space of pendulation with the mind and the body that you enter into the beginning of the homecoming, that is to enter into, I am now ready to do the work. Then we start to have the ability to show up differently. So when we are on that path of resistance, that one that isn't quite the path of least resistance, where the door to open may feel impossible to open, we got to be sure that we check who is going to be our guide through the path to open the door. What do you need before, during, and after you go in there? You go down the path of resistance, it's thorny, it's hectic. We need resources. We need a pack. We need to know what we're doing in some way. We got to go in blind in other ways, right? But we want to make sure that we have the guide to take us there. Whether you have experienced something big or small, or you didn't get the experience at all, the journey of self-development is always in need of a guide that is trauma-informed. Always. Dependent on the experiences themselves, then they may even need a guide that is not just merely trauma-informed, but trauma-trained, right? Meaning that they're equipped to support you specifically and properly with the walks of life, to be able to go there, to be able to get into the shadows, to be able to work with what it is that you carry. They need extensive training and a deep understanding. So let me break it down. Let me share with you the difference, right? Trauma-informed just doesn't cut the mustard. It simply means to understand that trauma is a thing, that it can impact people, that it does not mean that there is enough adequate training. This does not mean they are able to work with the depths of trauma. Just doesn't. Sorry, just doesn't. To be trauma aware is great. And I'm so thankful that so many people are. But there is a lane. there is a lane that so many health professionals seem to be in that shouldn't be in, that are actually causing more harm than good. The stories will trigger you too much to be able to bring in too many of them in here. But doing a breathwork session, right, doesn't mean you finally are aware because you released some of your shit. If you've done a retreat and had some of your own lived experiences, does not mean that you understand, To truly support someone through their trauma journey needs more than just being informed. It requires you to be trauma focused, right? And trauma trained. A lot of professionals can and should get more informed in their awareness around holding and respecting space and the way that someone might find themselves, might hold themselves, might be. Trauma-focused therapists don't need to be the only therapists or coaches or whatever it is that you are to do trauma-informed work, right? We can all practice phase 1 work of trauma, which is safety and stability. It's actually so helpful for any trauma-focused therapist to hope that the next or the person before have created a bit of safety and stability. And that person has felt a little bit more safe and stable. This is essential before we step into anything else. It's the starting point for someone to move into phase 2, which is bringing it up, looking back, being able to start to look at the intricate details of how I see the world and why and what my experience was, and starting to be with some of the difficult emotions. Right? So hopefully this is landing and you're still here, because now I'm going to move into what do you need to look for to see if someone is truly trauma informed, right? The things that this small list has, I think, are the ones that are just outside the box a tiny bit, that I think that a lot of trauma-informed training just isn't doing, right? And this is like a whole kettle of fish, right? It's you need the trauma-informed training that you're going to actually be a good standard, because otherwise you're just getting, you need to be safe. You need to, help them with understanding choice. You need to be culturally attuned. Just there's a lot of basics, right? Which maybe are important to share. I guess quickly, most trauma-informed trainings would have safety, right? Safety, a big priority. We want to make sure that we're touching that. And I think I won't talk to that. 2, trustworthiness maybe, and transparency, a big one to talk about. The support of people, the collaboration when you're working with someone, and what the mutuality of this, so that we're reducing the power imbalances that might feel intense. Cultural issues, as I mentioned, and the ability to empower. So yeah, hopefully you're getting that from your basic training. Things that I don't think are coming from more of these trainings, and what I actually think makes a really good, truly trauma-informed individual, is if they've got screening. They screened you, or they have a screening process to see where you're at. They do not have a buy now button to enter into a short-term piece of work. Not a book now button to do long-term psychotherapy, because then we can see how we're going. Right? And I could see whether or not I should be working with this type of person, but I still should have an intake form, and I still should be able to get an idea of whether I'm in my lane, whether I have the scope of practice to be able to see this person. So what I'm talking about is a little bit more intensive, is screening, is not having the buy now button to just enter into a big, deep, intensive work that you're kind of pitching, or this Instagram person or whatever it is, or wherever you're finding it, is saying, yes, trauma, cure, if there's a buy now button, that means there's no screening. It means there's no look at what it is that you hold that might be really big for you to actually do this work, right? there's a big block there, which means you're not going to get to it. And even then, there's only so much screening can do. Another one, do not let people that aren't trauma informed will let anyone into their events when it's intensive, right? They're running an intensive event, anyone and everyone can come. And then they hold a space for multiple people. You want someone who's really trauma informed, they don't let that happen because they're aware of trauma. They're aware of the risk, right? They understand the nervous system and can teach it and recognize that it's not just about teaching, but it's actually about doing and implementing. Checking your support system, right? Making sure that they know that you have other people in your world that if things get big and heavy and dark, that you've got support. And that if you are doing some big work, that you have some people and you're not alone. You shouldn't be doing big work if there's not others around you. Too risky. We can gauge. Another thing is if they're gauging how you look after yourself before, specifically, I would say, is the client doing self-care, right? And if they're not, I'm not moving anywhere until they start to have a regime for that. Another one might be really getting an idea if they're if they're client-led or person-centered, right? So the focus is on you. We're led by the client rather than week 1, we do this, week 2, we do this. It's actually, you need to be led by the client. It needs to be intuitive, a lot of this work, because of readiness, because of where people are at. Are they in their own therapy? There's a big one. Do they have a supervisor? Is the biggest telltale sign. If you are working with trauma, if you're working with any human in any way, you need a supervisor, a mentor, or someone that you are being supported by to talk through what you're doing with clients and to hold you in being able to continuously reflect on what that is. If you are seeing someone right now, ask them, do they have a therapist and do they have a supervisor? And if they don't buy now, right? Make sure that that's there. And if you're a coach listening to this, I'm so happy to help you pump out where to find that. I'm happy to support you in that. But it's just essential. You just need to be able to do it. The last one is they give you a voice and a choice. And I think that's where the contracts start to look like, opening up the span of time and being able to really get an idea of what you need. So that is a lot, right? And there's a lot to it. And I think that hopefully that gives some people a bit of an idea around it, right? But there's a lot missing in the work that we do because there's just a lot of missing sort of pieces. What I think I will just touch on is what I think's specifically missing when it comes to trauma-informed training. So anyone listening here, and I know I do follow a few people that are running trauma-informed certificates. Let me see if you're doing this. And let me see anyone that has done a trauma-informed training. Was this actually spoken to? And was this deeply made aware to you? And that you were able to practice it? Number 1 is getting someone out of a freeze state. We've got fight, flight, freeze, dissociative state. Firstly, we should be able to understand the nervous system. That should be in the training. Not only in the training, ask for your money back. We need to understand people's boiling points, people's freezing points. That is essential. I work with a lot of complex clients, and a lot of the time dissociation is a big part of that. So being able to somatically and or emotionally, psychologically, physically help someone get out of the freeze state, being able to recognize when someone's in it, and be able to have the right support resources to be able to do that. That's not there in a lot of trainings. It needs to be there. The next one is joining. Also, I'm not going to answer how to do all this. I'm just going to point it out. And obviously, if you're like, please tell me more, I will start to do more I guess, little workshops on it, talk about it in my stories and where. But these are crucial, right? Getting someone out of the freeze state. The next one is supporting you to be able to get the right joining and attuning inquiry questions, right? To be able to meet them where they are, join them, right? So things like, what's the smallest thing you're noticing right now? How does this feel right now, to be able to keep going, right? Can you describe what's going on in your body? That's not in a lot of these trauma trainings. Next one is gauging a client's level of awareness. So really setting up session 1 or the pre-screening to be able to get an idea of what their do's and don'ts are, what's not worked for them in the past, what works for them now. How can we feel more deeply connected with each other? When you feel stressed, how might you know? Get an idea of where they're at and how much they know about where they're at in their emotions and in their nervous system, whether that's done through questioning or whether that's done through some deeper, more exploration with you in their sessions together. Next one is asking how you'll know whether they've gone offline, where they've gone, see ya, checked out, right? Getting a really good idea of what someone's freezing points and boiling points are and how they can let you know that, and then what you can say if you think that that's where they've gone. They don't talk about that. Reassuring clients, right? We don't have to go near their trauma. Firstly, if you're going near their trauma too soon, too much, and too fast, it's not trauma informed. If you are setting the sessions up, if you are got the whole MO around you, that is to say, we don't need to go there for a while. We're going to slither towards that. Somatic sensory psychomotor therapy and somatic experiencing will say you need to go frame by frame towards pain, which means you need to clear what it's like to even think about talking about something difficult. You clear that, we move a little bit closer. Today we're going to talk about it. Ooh, that feels too big too. Okay, we don't go any further until that feels more clear. This is slowly entering slower. A lot of clients go, okay, so anyway, here's the thing. Here's my trauma. Blah, blah, blah. I was sexually abused, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to stop you. We're actually not going to do that. Oh, but I feel safe with you. I don't know that you know that. This is an idea of this space is safe. But how do you know that? You really don't know me. We need to build a relationship. And I really appreciate so much the fact that you are sharing this with me and you feel like, but actually the best thing for us to be doing and the best thing that actually really I need is to let you know that we're going to go so much slower than this. And that's for good reason. And then we might share what some of those reasons are. We don't need to go anywhere near the details of your trauma unless you feel ready to do so. And you know what? Side note, most of my clients, most of the deep trauma work that I've worked with, and I've been working with people for a long time, firstly, we say in safety and stability, phase 1 work of trauma. Secondly, I don't know the ins and outs of what happened to them. I don't need to. A good therapist doesn't need to, because I'm not replaying it. What good is that going to do? That's for people that I've been seeing for years. Others will do it in different ways, but a lot of the time it's not needed. We don't need to go there. You don't need to know the script. The next one, what real safety is and who gets to decide. Safety is the number one part of all trauma-informed training. And I think there's immediately something wrong that's delivered, is that we need to create a safe space and that we need to make sure we're doing everything to be safe. That's very true. The nuancedness of this, is that a word, is I don't get to decide if I hold a safe space. I don't get to decide that. They do. Safe is subjective. Who am I to say this is a safe place for you? Who am I to say that this is a safe podcast right now? What I just said might have triggered you. Oh no, but it's a safe space. I don't get to decide that. That's up to the person to decide. You got to recognize that safety is subjective and it's not just this physical and emotional and relational, energetic thing. It's all of those things. So we can only help guide and be informed. Our space is informed. That's what it should be. The last one is moderation with the body and the mind. A lot of health professionals out there, breath workers, ice bath instructors, massage therapists, even freaking chiropractors doing some big hectic mindset belief work, whatever. NLP, don't get me started. And we don't talk about moderation, right? If this feels too big, this is how we're going to cut it in smaller. If this is a lot, we're going to cut it even smaller. I have clients that can't bring their attention to their breath. What do you do with that? We're just going to do a breathing exercise. They can't do that. That'd freak them out. So what do? We have to be able to moderate. How do you moderate with complex clients? How do you moderate? How do you know you need moderation, right? Well, we're going to do a big breathwork session today. It's going to be in and out for the next 40 minutes. And then they don't say, if at any point that starts to feel intense, here are two other ways, two other breathing strategies that you can do to cut that in half. Then we can maybe return back to this when you're ready, right? We need to be able to check in. Does this feel manageable? Do we need to slow down? Give some options. Choice. Again, choice will be talked about in trauma-informed training, but that sort of choice, maybe not. The last one, I've got a couple more. All right, two more. Identifying what may be too stretchy for someone. What on different days does that need to look like? Check in, ask, right? Are they shutting down, becoming defensive, disconnecting? When am I noticing that this sort of thing is a no-go zone? What is in their comfort zone? What's that little beautiful piece? And this is what all trauma work is there has to be a little bit of dysregulation, right? It has to be, you have to feel it to heal it, right? So that's got to be defined. Everyone's window of tolerance is very different. So window of tolerance is discussed in trauma-informed training. The stretchiness of that is not. The last one, seeking permission. Now, I don't mean like, can I touch you? Like you see in those sort of like hairdressing videos every single time she tries to cut hair. I don't think that's really, really informed, right? I guess that can be really important depending on the client. And again, who am I to fucking say? Maybe that is a really nice way of doing it. But I don't mean become inhuman about it, become so not relatable that you are too freaking informed. And just saying like, hey, is it okay? Right? How's this feel? Not like we're going to do a process right now. It's like, would it be okay if we, moved into a experiment a little bit? Would it feel okay to do a bit of breathing? How do you feel about this? Right? It's just a check. It's just a seeking out. It's such a nice way to meet someone in their safety. And again, this just isn't mapped out in the way that I think trauma-informed training really needs to be. So, if this hits home, please tell me. Please make sure you've got your people. If you are a coach that wants to be more of a leader in this space, then please come and work with me in my mentorship and training and supervision program. I don't know what to call it, but it's all of those things and more to help people become the best trauma specialists that they can be, knowing that they're working with trauma, whether they like it or not. It's such a valuable place to kind of pull yourself around people that are just being accountable, taking responsibility, and being humble to this work. You can put my hand on my heart and say, I will continue to have supervision, coaching, and therapy, all three, for the rest of my life, right? Devoted to sharpening iron on iron, right? So this is my mission. This is my purpose. This is my soul's offer. And I want to help people come home. I want to help people be able to help people come home. And we got to do that right. We got to make long-term transformation, right? None of this one-night stand with change. Hopefully this wets the whistle. This you are picking up what I am putting down. Please, 5 star, comment, tell me you're here. I would love, love, love to keep this flavor up and more people to come in and reason with me. Thanks for being here.